Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to video 10, part 10 of our 12-part series called Turning the Page, a self-guided Recovery Dharma Book Study course where we go through the entirety of the Recovery Dharma workbook. And if you're not familiar with the Recovery Dharma, it is a Buddhist approach to recovery from addictions of all kind, whether you're suffering from addiction to alcohol, drugs, process addictions, all that fun stuff. We're here to help you out. And in this book study course, we're going through the entire book from kind of a top level perspective. It's not an end all be all book study course, but it's intended as an introduction and as a friend walking through the book. And this week, the most important part is that we're covering wise mindfulness and wise concentration. So, yeah, enough for me. Let's get into that. All right. So, wise mindfulness, wise concentration. At this point, we're wrapping up the seventh and eighth fold of the eightfold path. So, we've gone through the other six folds in the eightfold path. And if you're not familiar with the structure of these videos, the hope, the aspiration, the format is each week I'll cover the major themes that I've identified within any given section of the book, and then we'll highlight some highlighted quotes that I have in my own Recovery Dharma book. And I'll also share with you my personal experiences from 4+ years of work in Buddhist recovery programs like this, as well as helping teach it to others here locally in my own Recovery Dharma community. And just anecdotally give you feedback as to what traditionally sticks out to other people when reading this book. It's not an end all be all guide to the Recovery Dharma book, but it's meant as a one wise friend helping another wise friend on their recovery journey, wherever you're at on your recovery journey, wherever you're at geographically. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're finding these videos of benefit. And in this video, we're going to talk about wise mindfulness and wise concentration. So these are two of my favorite folds of the Eightfold Path. Meditation is a game changer. Meditation changed my life. I can say there was my life before meditation and life after meditation. And meditation is one of those things that you hear about in recovery centers, you hear about it from therapists, you hear from counselors, you'll hear about it from all sorts of things. People like, oh, hey, you should meditate. And most people are like, in my experience, those who don't get into meditation view it like jogging. They're just like, yeah, I know I should work out and eat healthy. It would make me feel better, but I don't. And it's like, yeah, no, like meditation, and I want to be really emphatically clear here. If you are suffering from addiction of any type, if you do one thing and only one thing to work towards your recovery process, it's definitely meditation. Meditation is straight up impulse control and emotional regulation. And if you want to talk about the foundational causes of addiction, impulse control, emotional regulation. And we're going to talk about both those things in today's section on wise mindfulness and wise concentration, which they are different folds of the path. They're distinctly different, but I'm putting them together just for brevity's sake for this quick start guide of a book study. The first quote I want to get into, and it's a lengthy one, but I love it, is page 34. Man, I hope my friends don't see these videos because, like, some of the voices I use on here, not great. Not a great look for me. First quote, page 34. Mindfulness asks us to be aware and to investigate without the reactivity and grasping for control that leads to suffering. We learn to stay attentive to what's happening without having to either react to or deny what's happening. That's a key point, not having to react to or deny what's happening. For many of us, our addictions prevented us from being mindful. In fact, that was often the whole point. We used our substances and behaviors to avoid feeling, to avoid being aware, because being aware was painful. But by trying to avoid pain, we often created more suffering. We're now making a different choice to sit with the discomfort rather than pushing it away or trying to numb it. And I love at the very end, it has the line, we're remembering that there's another way to respond to the difficulties of life. Heck yeah. Like I was saying before, meditation is a game changer for anybody who is struggling with addiction. The number one theme, the number one point I want to share as to both wise mindfulness and wise concentration is the window of reactivity. In that paragraph and throughout both these sections, you'll essentially what's being described is the window of reactivity. It is the learning emotional regulation and it's learning impulse control. Those are the major themes of wise mindfulness and wise concentration is learning emotional regulation and learning impulse control. It's learning to sit, be mindful, observe our breath, observe our body, observe feeling tones, going through the four foundations of mindfulness, which I'll address here in a second. And then ultimately also cultivating the heart practices, but a lot of that's done first through learning the skill of meditation. We have other videos on this in the Quick Start Guide that talk about meditation. If you have not watched that video, absolutely 100% watch the Quick Start Guide to the Practice video on meditation. We even outline how to start a daily meditative practice, and we go into some of the details of the benefits of a meditative practice. That said, in the book study video on this, I do want to read through the four foundations of mindfulness. Um, but before getting to that, to wrap up the idea of the window of reactivity as well as emotional regulation, I do have another quote to share on the top of 35. When talking about impulse control and emotional regulation, I love the quote that reads, our minds can get lost in how we react to experiences. When something happens, we almost immediately begin to create a story, plan, or fantasy about it. That's often called storytelling mind. Storytelling mind is a fascinating concept to learn more about. We have a thought about an experience, that thought leads to another, and on until we're far from a real understanding of the experience itself. Yep, it's called storytelling mind. Mindfulness is noticing the experience in that moment before we get lost in the judgment of the moment or the stories we spin about it. Yeah, so through a formal meditative practice, we are learning to sit, observe our minds, and it really becomes a superpower in meditation. But more specifically, the thing that Recovery Dharma wants to emphasize, and this sometimes gets lost for whatever reason locally, is the emphasis on the Satipatthana Sutta, the emphasis on the four foundations of mindfulness. I mean, and it's really straightforward, basic stuff. This is not like this is. I feel like it's pretty straightforward stuff. Um, I'm going to do a bit of reading on this one just because, like, I feel like this is such an important part of understanding the meditative practice from a recovery dharma perspective. There's a lot of different ways to meditate. Like, there's a lot of different ways to meditate. There's transcendental meditation, there's positive affirmations, there's chakra stuff. Those are all fun. Those are, you do you. But from a recovery dharma perspective, as far as what's actually discussed in the book and what's recommended, 100% starting with the four foundations of mindfulness, of breath and body, feeling tone, and mindfulness of the mind. This is a recommendation within the Recovery Dharma book. We also get into it in our 30 Sits in 30 Days course, the Beyond Craving course, which if you haven't check that out, because we literally go through this part of the Recovery Dharma book on 35. Mindfulness practice is based on the Satipatthana Sutta. Wow, it's been a long day for me, but I'm going to plow through. Or the four foundations of mindfulness. The first foundation of mindfulness of the body asks us to bring awareness, attention, and focus on our breath and the body. It asks us to bring awareness and attention and focus on our breath and to bodily sensations. Meditations on the breath and body are focused on this awareness. The second foundation is mindfulness of feeling tone and feeling tones. This practice involves noticing the emotional tone, pleasure or displeasure, that comes from every sensation, even when the sensation is a thought. It also encourages us to notice when a sensation is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but feels neutral. For example, we can experience inhales and exhales by noticing where in our body we feel the breath most directly. The second foundation instructs us to notice those sensations that are neutral, as well as those that are pleasant or unpleasant. The third foundation, mindfulness in the mind. Mindfulness in the mind is a game changer. Like that was being able to learn mindfulness of the mind, big moment for me. Ask us to notice when attachment also known as greed or wanting, comes up, and to be aware that attachment arises in the mind. We also learn to notice when the mind is not attached to particular thought or sensations. The same practices of noticing applies to applies when we become aware of aversion, which we can experience as resistance or even hatred. When aversion isn't present in the mind, we can notice that the mind is free from aversion. The fourth foundation of mindfulness, mindfulness of dhammas, we begin to notice when a thought arises, being aware of it without judgment or evaluation, allowing it to pass away without holding on to it, and without creating a story out of it. Training in the fourth foundation allows us to be aware of thoughts arising and passing away and realizing each will pass when we let go. Yeah. Second theme, second big takeaway. I know that was a lot of reading there. Is the four foundations of mindfulness. Yeah, one, emotional reactivity and impulse control is a big theme of wise mindfulness and wise concentration. Second thing is learn and dig into the four foundations of mindfulness. It's John Kabat Zen style, just learning the breath and body. First foundation, learning feeling tone, whether something's pleasant, unpleasant, and then starting to actually observe thoughts for thoughts. Mindfulness of the mind. I still remember a very vivid moment in my Buddhist recovery about, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 months in of like a daily meditative practice. And then all of a sudden, at one point, having a situation, and I realized that I had very, very abusive self talk. As far as a line of thinking in my head. And because of mindfulness of the mind and just mindfulness in general, the meditative practice that I'd been developing specifically through Buddhist recovery, I was able to identify that thought pattern and be like, oh, wow, that's some thinking that I didn't realize was there. And then I was able to one, identify it. And then I was able to start to correct it and be like, oh, that's not true. Like I was able to see storytelling mind as storytelling mind and say, no, that's not true. And start to then supplement it with heart practices and Brahma Viharas and be like, knowing that I am deserving of love, I am deserving of compassion, I am deserving of healthy, beneficial things in my life. But the big themes of one, impulse control, emotional regulation, two, the four foundations of mindfulness, and then in the spirit of trying to keep these to the point, highly, highly, highly recommend going through the inquiry questions. The On the bottom of 36, if you have not done so, if you and I were working together, I would ask you the questions of what are steps you can take to support a regular meditative practice. Write those down, answer that. What are steps you can take to practice mindfulness throughout the day by checking in with yourself about how you're feeling and pausing before reacting to situations? Beautiful suggestion. I mean, that's a big part of where we start to understand the underlying causes and conditions of our addictive behaviors and thoughts and feeling tones. And then the question on the top of 37, what are steps you can take to sit with your discomfort instead of running away from it or running towards temporary pleasure? Um, Kind of touched on this in a previous video, but so many people come to a Buddhist recovery practice and they're really looking instead for a spiritual bypass. They're just looking for the feel good emotional release. They're still aversive to feeling any type of, or they're still avoidant of anything aversive in nature. But the superpower of a Buddhist practice, in my opinion, and of the four foundations of mindfulness is learning to sit with discomfort, sit with unease, sit with the easy feeling tones, and then being able to say, "Oh, I'm not going to go run off to a liquor store tonight because of that. I'm not going to go hit the dealer's house. I'm not going to reach out to abusive relationship or whatever your process addiction is." The big thing on a meditative practice is we're learning to sit with discomfort, sit with unease, and we're learning to not endlessly pursue pleasure. Um, the only other thing that I wanted to mention on the piece on wise concentration, they really do go hand in hand. But the quotes I did want to point out were on 37. The purpose of concentration, and this is a really important quote. This really summarizes wise concentration, quite frankly. The purpose of concentration is to train the mind to be focused and undistracted. These distractions can lead to a feeling of unease or restlessness. It is perfectly normal. In our addictions, we nurtured the habit of distracting ourselves. Heck yeah, we did. Nobody wants to sit with that, right? And for many of us, it became a survival technique. Concentration meditation gives us the opportunity to meet this habit with kindness and patience rather than resistance. It goes on to say, concentration, like the rest of the factors of the Eightfold Path, is a practice, a practice, a practice, a practice. As with any practice of meditation, simply noting the distraction and accepting that it exists and then refocusing our mind back on the object of concentration is the practice. Our habitual patterns can seduce us into thinking that we're doing it wrong, into judging our practice, or giving up entirely. Don't let them. When we observe what the mind is telling us and react with compassion, knowing we have the power to recognize it and refocus it, we strengthen our ability to concentrate. I'll close on this point of wise concentration. Practice, practice, practice. Like it's all about practice. Just be kind to yourself. Be compassionate to yourself as you go through and learn the skill. It's practice, practice, practice. Anyone can learn these skills. It's the refocusing of the mind and doing it habitually and continuously. If you can learn to breathe, you can learn to meditate. So, yeah, so we're just plowing through these self-guided book studies. You should be highlighting things on your own. You should be making notes of your own. If you disagree with my assessment of any of this stuff, leave a comment in the comment below. Please be kind. Come on, I'm doing the best I can here. Yeah, doing the best I can. If you do like these videos, if you appreciate them, if you're enjoying them, or if you just want to do a random act of kindness, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment of some sort. In the next video, we're going to talk about Sangha. Yeah, we're going to be on part 11 of our 12-part series, and we're going to talk about Sangha, community. Yeah, let's get together. Let's talk about wise friends. Yeah, good stuff. So look forward to seeing you in that video. Until then, namaste.